My name is Lisa, and at 29 years old, at the family reunion I funded, they handed out custom t shirts to everyone. Mine read, Biggest Disappointment. I didn't argue. I just smiled, pulled out a thick stack of documents, ripped them cleanly in two, and walked out. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. An hour later, they finally realized what I had destroyed, and the phone calls started flooding in. I wish I could say it caught me off guard, that it hit me out of nowhere, but truthfully, it felt more like the last puzzle piece in a picture I'd been pretending wasn't real. I stood there, holding the shirt, staring at those bold black words as if they'd been tattooed across my chest. Biggest disappointment. How thoughtful. My sister Laura was already chuckling. It's just a joke, she said. From across the table, Frankie Ben raised his beer and shrugged. Come on, girl, it's kind of funny, right? My parents? They stayed quiet at first. Then my mom gave a soft laugh, like someone had just cracked an awkward joke at a PTA meeting. My dad shook his head and smiled, the kind of smile people give when someone stumbles on the sidewalk. I nodded once, then again slower. Right, funny. I folded the shirt with care and placed it at the edge of my plate. Nobody noticed my hands trembling. Or maybe they did, and simply didn't care. I don't know what I expected. I had paid for the whole thing. The venue, the food, the travel, even the matching shirts. That's the punchline, isn't it? They used my credit card to print that label. Hilarious. I spent months planning this weekend, booking the old lakeside house they always talked about so fondly. I thought, naively, I guess, that maybe nostalgia would soften them. That maybe this time I'd feel like I belonged. Instead, I got a printed reminder of exactly where I stood in the family. And the saddest part, I wasn't even mad, just exhausted. The kind of tired that seeps into your bones and settles like cement. I pushed back my chair and smiled. Be right back, I said, and headed upstairs to the guest room. Technically, it was my room, since I'd rented the whole house. I opened my bag. The folder was right where I'd left it. Thick, crisp, waiting. I had printed the documents on special parchment, something that felt meaningful, something they could hold on to. I'd even thought about bringing champagne to celebrate the news. Instead, I returned to the dining room and stopped just behind my empty seat. No one noticed. They were too busy taking a group selfie in their brand new shirts. Perfect. I slid the folder open, removed the papers, and started tearing them in half. Slowly, intentionally, one page at a time. Laura turned around first. Wait, what is that? Ben frowned. Is that a contract? I said nothing. My dad rose halfway from his chair. Frank. I placed the shredded papers in front of my untouched plate. Smiled again, this time with an edge. Enjoy the shirts. And I walked away. No yelling, no slamming doors. Just the sound of my footsteps on the old wooden floor, the creak of the screen door behind me, and the cool night air brushing my face, like a quiet kind of freedom. I didn't even bother grabbing my jacket. I didn't need it. I was halfway to the car when the first call came in, then a second, then three more, like a dam cracking open. I didn't answer, not yet. Let them read what I destroyed first. Let them feel it. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before even turning the key, just staring at my hands on the wheel. Still calm, still too calm. Like my body hadn't caught up with what had just happened. They laughed. That part kept looping in my head. My mom, my siblings, even my dad, like it was all so harmless. Like calling me their biggest disappointment was just another cute little family quirk, right up there with Laura's passive-aggressive holiday cards and Ben's jokes about me being single. But it wasn't harmless, and it wasn't new. I could trace it back to age 9. That was the year Ben broke the neighbor's window with a baseball, and I got grounded for not stopping him. Laura lied about failing a test, and I got a lecture about being a bad influence. Every mistake in that house somehow had my name attached to it, even if I wasn't in the room. At 12, I remember getting a C in math, my first. I cried not because of the grade, but because I knew exactly what was coming. Dinner table sarcasm, mom's dramatic sigh, dad's quiet disappointment. Meanwhile, Ben could flunk an entire semester and still get extra spending money, just for trying. At 17, I begged them to co-sign a small student loan. Not even money, just a signature. They said no. Said I needed to learn responsibility. Ben wrecked 2 cars by then. Laura had already moved to Europe for a photography course, which our parents helped fund. But I needed to learn responsibility. So I worked nights, slept 4 hours a day, built something from nothing. A tech service at first, then a subscription platform. Learned how to code, how to pitch, how to get rejected, and keep going. I didn't ask for much. A little credit would have been nice. Maybe we're proud of you. Instead, I became the running gag. The weird one. The girl who always showed up late to Thanksgiving because she was probably coding in a basement somewhere. When I got my first six-figure investment, I told no one. When I cleared my student debt in one lump sum, I told no one. When my company went viral, still no one. It felt like if I told them, they'd just find a way to twist it, turn it into another joke, or worse, take credit for it. So I kept quiet. But I watched. Watched Laura host parties in apartments I knew she couldn't afford on her salary. Watched Ben post cryptic Instagram captions about mental health, only to DM me for money 2 days later. Watched my parents struggle with their mortgage, but still buy anniversary cruises. And I started helping, quietly, an anonymous donation here, an untraceable transfer there. Because despite everything, I still wanted to believe in family. I thought maybe if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. That fantasy shattered last Christmas. I offered to fly everyone out to a ski lodge I rented. My mom told me to save my money, then posted a status about how Laura surprised them with a family-funded holiday. That was when I decided no more behind the scenes. The reunion I just left? That was supposed to be my reveal, a real one. I had it all lined up. A notarized letter gifting my parents early retirement, their mortgage wiped clean, a down payment agreement for Laura and her kids, a new start in a better school district, a debt relief fund for Ben, plus an optional job referral if he ever wanted to start fresh. Each document was signed, sealed, printed on heavy linen paper. I even picked navy blue folders to match the table decor. That's how far I went. I wanted it to be beautiful, memorable. I imagined the look on my mother's face when she read the letter, the tears, the pride, the slow realization that the daughter she once called directionless had built something big enough to give them a second chance. I pictured my father standing up in silence, gripping my hand firmly. I imagined Laura saying, "I misjudged you," and Ben going, "Damn, sis, I had no clue." I envisioned so many different versions of that moment. What I got instead was a joke printed on a t-shirt. And I know what you might be thinking. Maybe it wasn't intentional. Maybe it was just a poorly timed joke. Maybe their reactions would have been different if I had told them beforehand. But here's the truth. On some level, they already knew. They saw the car I drove. They noticed my clothes. They clocked the way people responded when I casually mentioned my company's name. Once, my mom even asked if I was doing okay financially. But in that cautious, practiced way people use when they're fishing for confirmation but don't want to come off as impressed. They didn't care, or maybe they did care, and they hated what it revealed about them. So they laughed, because keeping me in the disappointment box was easier than accepting they might have been wrong. And now they were going to find out exactly what was inside those papers. Not just them, everyone. Everyone who ever heard them whisper about poor Lisa. Everyone who believed I was some failure, bouncing from one sad project to another. They were about to learn the truth, but things had to get worse first, because I hadn't even seen the messages yet, the ones they were already firing off, the lies taking shape, the narrative they were crafting before I had a chance to say a word. That came next. I hadn't even reached the city before the rumors started to fly. The first call came from a friend I hadn't heard from in months. "Hey, your sister posted something kind of weird. Said you had a breakdown at the reunion. You okay?" Breakdown. That was the word she used. I opened Facebook, and there it was. A picture of the dinner table from earlier. T-shirts spread out. Wine glasses still half full. A cake in the middle. The caption read, "Some people just can't handle being part of a family. We still love you, even when you self-sabotage." No names, no specifics, but the implication was crystal clear. The comments were flooded with vague sympathy and passive-aggressive takes. "So sorry, girl. You deserve peace. You did your best. Some people are just toxic. Family can be messy. Sending hugs." That alone would have been bad enough, but then came the pings. Group chat messages, screenshots, forwarded texts from cousins. My aunt reached out, asked if I was okay, said my mother had called her, sobbing, claiming I had thrown a fit and shredded legal documents in the middle of a manic breakdown. Ben sent me a message directly. "You really need help. You embarrassed all of us. We tried to include you, and you made it a scene. Real classy. Include me, right?" I didn't reply. I just forwarded the original documents to my attorney, asked him to timestamp the email, and copied my assistant. 5 minutes later, she responded, "Would you like me to push the Forbes feature to this weekend? I can reattach the scan pages." Yes, that. Because here's the thing. I had options. I had proof. I had receipts. They only had a story, a flimsy one at that. But the louder they repeated it, the more damage it could cause. If my family is skilled at one thing, it's rewriting history. Fast. But not this time. This time, I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I had let them shape my narrative for too long. Now it was my turn. I started by sharing the Forbes link quietly. No tag, no commentary. Just the article. The underdog founder who secretly funded her family's life for a decade and then cut ties. Inside were photos of the documents, scanned, signed, and dated, the same ones I'd torn up at the reunion. The article mentioned the company valuation north of $30 million and the anonymous donations traced back to me. It mentioned the mortgage payments, the college funds I'd quietly created under shell accounts. It mentioned the tech mentorship grant I launched 6 months ago for people who'd been written off by their own families. And it mentioned, briefly but clearly, why I walked away, not with bitterness, with clarity. Within hours, my inbox exploded. First were the congratulations, then the apologies, then the panic. A voicemail from Laura. "Why would you make that public? You're humiliating us." Text from Ben. "Wow, real mature. Hope you feel good about ruining the family name." Then my mom. "We need to talk. You misunderstood the joke. We were just having fun." Misunderstood a joke. It was almost funny the way they were doubling down. But it wasn't over, not yet. Because the story was gaining traction, and the spotlight I never wanted, it was about to get a lot brighter. A YouTube channel picked it up, then a podcast, then a short documentary. Comments flooded in. People chose sides, but mostly they chose me. Because people recognize humiliation when they see it, especially when it wears a smile and calls itself family. Ben tried to clap back online, posted a rant about me being unstable, said I was twisting facts. Someone responded with a screenshot of the contract I'd written for him, annotated with dates. Someone else found an old tweet where Laura joked about being the golden child. Not so funny now. A tech influencer I didn't even know shared the Forbes article with the caption, "Let this be a reminder. Not every black sheep is lost. Some are just done with wolves in sweaters." They thought they could smear me, discredit me, make me look like the problem. Instead, they ended up exposed. And still, I hadn't said a word publicly, not once. Because I didn't have to. I had something better than a rebuttal. I had receipts. And now I had the world watching. You'd think after the article, after the messages, after the public unraveling of their favorite story, they'd back off. They didn't. If anything, they doubled down. Ben posted a long thread about how I was exaggerating for sympathy. He said I had a history of being dramatic. Said I was always the one who felt left out even when they tried their best. Laura started damage control with extended family. She told them I wasn't well, that the money had gone to my head, that I'd cut ties not because of a t-shirt, but because I was always looking for a reason to leave. And my parents, they stayed quiet publicly, but I know they were calling around, framing it as a misunderstanding. A sad situation. She just took things the wrong way. I watched them try to rebuild their version of the story, but this time it wasn't sticking. Because the people they were talking to, a lot of them had already reached out to me quietly. A cousin who said she always noticed how I was treated differently. A former neighbor who remembered hearing my mom call me a late bloomer while bragging about Ben's internship at a company I now owned equity in. The part that hit hardest wasn't their spin. It was the realization that I had spent so long hoping they'd change, I didn't notice how much I had. I was no longer the kid trying to earn a seat at their table. I had my own table now. And the silence that followed that realization, it was the first time I felt peace in years. They sent a letter. It wasn't an apology. Not really. Just a carefully worded, "We're still your family and we love you, and we hope you can move past this." Move past it. Like it was a phase. Like I got offended and stormed off and needed to come back once I'd cooled down. I didn't reply. A week later, they sent another. This one was longer, more emotional. Talked about the things they'd done for me when I was younger. Meals, rides, a roof over my head, like that made up for everything. They never mentioned the money or the years of jokes or how quick they were to smear me when I finally said no. Then, out of nowhere, Ben posted an old photo of us from when we were kids. Captioned it, Miss my sister. Still love her. Always will. I got tagged a lot. People wanted a reaction. But the only ones I ever owed anything to were the ones who stuck around when I had nothing. And none of them were wearing coordinated t-shirts. So I stayed quiet. And in that silence, things kept shifting. Laura's husband walked out. She had been clinging hard to the whole "we're victims of cancel culture" narrative, and he wasn't on board with it. He took the kids and moved in with his sister. I didn't hear it from Laura. Someone else told me. Ben lost a speaking engagement at some minor event he'd lined up for himself. Apparently, someone had forwarded the full article to the event organizer, along with an old podcast clip where he'd joked that I never followed through on anything. As for my parents, they tried refinancing their house. Didn't work out. A friend of mine in finance mentioned the bank flagged signs of instability. It wasn't directly my fault. But I had stopped sending the monthly transfers. That part? That was me. And I started living, not to get even, just finally, freely. I traveled without constantly checking my phone. I made choices without worrying whether they'd finally be impressed. I built things because I wanted to, not to win anyone's approval. Then one night, sometime later, I got a message from someone I didn't recognize. A stranger who'd seen the article. Just a single line. "Thank you for showing people like me that it's okay to walk away." That one stayed with me, not because I craved validation, but because it reminded me walking away wasn't an act of selfishness. It was self-preservation. It was survival. I'd never been angry that they didn't love me the way I needed. I was angry that they pretended they did, while tearing me down every time I tried to stand tall. That night, I opened a box I'd long forgotten about. Inside were copies of the original papers, the ones I'd torn to shreds. I ran my fingers over them. Thick parchment, cream-colored, still sharp at the edges where I'd ripped the first set. It didn't feel like loss anymore, it felt like closure. I don't know where they are now, I don't check. Sometimes people send me updates, but I delete them before reading to the end. Not out of apathy, but because the version of me who craved their approval doesn't exist anymore. She's gone, and she's not coming back. Update 2 years later. It's been a while. I got invited to a wedding recently, not family, a friend. One of the few who saw me at my lowest and stayed anyway. At the reception, someone introduced me to their cousin. She smiled, shook my hand, and said, "Wait, are you the t-shirt girl?" I laughed, really laughed. "Yeah," I said, "yes, I am." She told me she had cut ties with her own parents last year, said my story gave her the courage to do it. I didn't know what to say then, still don't, honestly. But it stuck with me. Because for the longest time, I believed walking away meant defeat, meant surrender, failure. But in reality, it was the first time I had ever stood up for myself. Sometimes I wonder if they still talk about me, if they tell the story differently now, if they miss me, or just miss the version of me they could control. I haven't reached out, and they haven't either. Not for a long time. Maybe that says everything. Did I go too far, or not far enough? Let me know in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe.